everybody, how you doing today? My name's Andrew. I'm Matt.
I'm Grandpa.
I'm Tracy.
Hi, Katie.
I'm Joel.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Megan.
I'm Petey.
I'm Aunt Becky.
And we're some of the Veggie Boys.
Hey, Ghost.
And we'd like to thank you for stopping by. If you're new here, please consider subscribing because we can grow a lot of stuff on the farm, but one thing we can't grow is this channel without your help. Welcome back, everyone. It's so nice to see you. Right away, we're getting started with setting up the farm market. Matthew and I have already gone through and cleaned and sanitized all of our countertops, and now we're getting all of the produce that we had previously put into the cooler pulled out. We still won't know what we have until we get everything pulled out, but this is a good opportunity for us to see what needs to be harvested today, and we need to check our orders. So right away, we have Callie with us this morning. Are you ready to work today? No, we are now all finished with setting up the farm market, so now we're moving on to other chores. We need to get the animals all taken care of, so we're moving on to feeding. Dad and Daniel are just finishing up with taking care of the animals. They got started while Matthew and I were filling up the farm market. So all they have to do is feed silage for the cattle and grab a little bit of grain for them. And since that's all they really have to do, Dad asked me to run off and get started on our first job. Can you believe this? I have to walk to my first job. Unbelievable. But it's okay because I didn't have to go too far. I just needed to walk out to the garden because the first thing we need to harvest today is red beets. Now, red beets are very popular here on the farm. We sell many beets for canning. A lot of people can in this area, so that's why they sell so quickly. And since they sell so quickly, we need to raise a lot of them, which is why we have such a large patch here. And let me just say, talking about red beets is fun, but even more fun is harvesting them, which is what we're gonna get started with. So I'm looking for medium to large beets, which shouldn't be too much of an issue because the beets are starting to get nice size to them. It hasn't rained in a couple days. Shocker, I know. When it does rain, it is a little easier to harvest the beets, but the ground is still on the moist side, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And then everything that I harvest, I'm going to be putting on a pile for the boys. That way it's a little easier for them to take the tops off. Now, some sections, the beets are grown up a little bit more than others, so I will have to do some looking around this morning to find everything that we need. Now, because of the way the field of red beets is set up, I will have to jump around a little bit to find everything that we need, but that's the way they were planted, and that's really the way that we harvest. We try and pick everything even, that way we know where to start next time we come out to pick. And I'm just super impressed with how the red beets look today. I think the customers are going to be very happy. We already got one large pile of red beets pulled out of the ground, and now I'm working on my second one. I really don't know how much we need. Dad just said to come and pull red beets. I'm sure we need quite a bit for the farm market, so whatever I pull will be used. Aunt Becky was telling me that people have been asking about orders for red beets. So I guess it's time to start getting these things pulled out of the ground. I would prefer if they're a little bigger than this, or maybe not bigger, just that they were more mature. The first planting of red beets that we put into the soil, it didn't make it because of the intense drought that we were experiencing at the time. But the second planting of red beets really came along nicely. It's just later than we would have liked to have it, which sometimes you just gotta live with what you got. But hopefully everybody that has orders will be able to get them the beets that they need. There's plenty of red beets here, so that's not gonna be the issue. I just hope that everything can grow and we can get the orders filled. At this point, I've got the red beets all pulled up to a certain point in the field. Every single time we come out and pick, we try and make sure that we keep everything even. And we've got picked up to about this point right here. And this morning, I found all those red beets just going through the older stuff. But now all of this is stuff that has not been pulled yet, so I'm just gonna continue working up through the rows. You know, out of all the jobs we do, picking red beets is like one of the most physically demanding jobs because you got to be bent over, you have to be searching, you got to pull them out of the ground. Sometimes they don't come out of the ground too easy. So since it's so physically demanding, you'd think I wouldn't like this job, but this actually is one of my favorite jobs. I don't mind pulling red beets. We've made quite a few red beet piles so far, and the boys have gone through and pulled the tops off. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now they're starting on the 7th basket. Every time we harvest red beets, whoever is pulling the tops off also sorts them. We have a small, medium, and large pile. And the biggest reason why we sort them is because some customers want smaller red beets, some want larger. So by sorting all the red beets, we can make sure that the customers get exactly what they want. Dad said he wanted 12 baskets, which that's quite a bit of red beets. So we're just gonna stay here pulling. Matt has done a good job at keeping up with us. Dad every once in a while will stop pulling and help Matt break down the red beets. But for now, it's just Dad and I pulling beets and Matthew ripping the tops off.
I stopped pulling because Matthew's going too slow.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
One of the main problems is that after a while, all the red beets start looking the same.
What do you mean, Matt? Are they all red?
I meant the same size, Dad.
Usually when I get up in the morning, I can kind of figure out what we're gonna be doing. I did not expect to be pulling red beets, that's for sure. And I gotta be careful because these are Grammy's cylinder beets. There's some regular beets in here too, but we can't be pulling Grammy's cylinder beets. She will be upset, especially because Grammy's on vacation right now. Oh, I guess since Grammy's gone, Matt, we can pull her cylinder beets.
She watches the video, so she'll still catch us. Or she'll just notice that some are missing.
Grammy, well, the deer were quite busy on the cylinder beets while you were gone.
Well, that would have worked if we didn't just show us looking at them. And believe me, I am not brave enough to pull Grammy's cylinder beets. I just know there's some regular beets scattered in here among the cylinder beets. So I'm just trying to get everything that's ready to pull that I can. We're just about finished with harvesting red beets. They have one little pile that they're pulling the tops off of, and then that will be everything that we needed to get picked for today when it comes to red beets. Right here I can give you a kind of the understanding of how we separate the beets. We have our larger ones right here, we have our medium-sized beets, and finally we have our smaller beets. The smallest beets, they're about golf ball size. The medium beets, they're about baseball size. And then the larger beets, they're about softball. Just to give you an understanding of how big everything really is. Matthew and I are taking the red beets that we have loaded on the side-by-side back to the farm. All the red beets that we harvest, we wash right after we finish harvesting. That way they look really nice for the customers. We got our first 4 baskets of mediums dumped into the bin, so Matthew's gonna be rinsing them off as I run and grab the rest of them. Making the biggest red beet soup, although I wouldn't drink this soup. All red beets have now been loaded onto the side-by-side, and soon enough they'll be in the farm market. We have just about 2 baskets full of large red beets, and we got a basket and a half of the small ones, which tells us a lot actually. It tells us that the red beets are just about at the perfect size that we like to harvest them. The medium beets do seem to be the most popular, and these are the size that we like to harvest. The larger ones do fill a basket faster, but these medium ones, they look so good. So all we have to do is get the rest of the red beets washed and then get everything moved into the cooler. Once we got all the red beets moved in, we got a drink, got some fruit to eat, and now we're on our way back out to the fields. So our next thing that we have scheduled to harvest today is pickling cucumbers, but we've ran into a few problems with the pickling cucumbers as of late. The biggest thing is that the cucumbers have actually been molding, and that's obviously been because of the amount of moisture that we've seen in our fields. This is what's happening to a lot of the cucumbers. We just really wanted to come out and check the pickling cucumbers today to see what we could find. We're not expecting to find too much because this is the sad reality that we're facing. The pickling cucumbers were the next thing that we wanted to harvest, but if we're not able to find anything and it's not worth our time to pick them, we'll just have to move on to something else. Another thing we have to watch out for as we're picking is if there's any soft ones, we can't take those. Some of them may look good, but like this one, they're soft. So that will just rot by tomorrow, so we don't want to take anything like that. It is nice to see that even though they are being affected by the mold, the plants are not giving up. There are smaller cucumbers coming and beautiful blossoms here and there. It is sad to pick through these cucumbers and not really be able to find anything that we can harvest. We remember just 2-3 weeks ago, these cucumbers were almost producing more than we could handle. But due to a number of factors, that has changed. It has been a little cooler at night. We are starting to get less sunlight, and there's been lots of water. Too much water. I don't even see anything. These plants are so thin here. I can look right through them. Now, the way we had our planting set up, we should have still been harvesting off this planting for another week or two. So unfortunately, that's not happening, because the time this planting should have been slowed down to this point, we should have been moving on to the next planting of pickling cucumbers and regular cucumbers. That's why we plant multiple times in spring and the beginning of summer, to prevent something like this happening where we won't have any pickling cucumbers to pick. We are now back at the farm. There wasn't too much change with the pickling cucumbers. They didn't look nice the rest of the row, so I didn't film them anymore. But now that we are home, it's time to head in and get some lunch. Alrighty. For lunch today, it looks like we're having hot dogs. We also got beans and pasta salad. We just got finished with lunch, so now we're out in the farm market talking about what needs to get done. We need to pick tomatoes today. We also have some peppers that need to be harvested. So we're just trying to get everything figured out. Because working is a lot easier when you have a plan, because then we got something to follow. Are we gonna need all these? I don't know, we'll figure it out. We took a quick ride down around back looking for baskets, and we found plenty. There wasn't much stuff that we picked out there earlier on when it comes to the pickling cucumbers, so we didn't even bring the wagon back, we just brought the side-by-side back. We've now made it out to the field, and our first stop is gonna be the tomatoes. Now, you always hear us talking about how happy we are with our tomatoes, but just look at these green tomatoes right when I got out of the side-by-side, just to help you understand what we're looking to harvest here soon. Look at this tomato. It's almost the size of my hand. We need both round and plum, so I am gonna get started on harvesting some plum tomatoes, and Dad is gonna be joining me with that, but when Matthew shows up, he'll probably get started on the round. Wow, these are beautiful plum tomatoes. Look at them, gorgeous. Now, as I mentioned, we have two types of tomatoes. We raise a round and a plum. Well, actually, we have a few more types, but the round and plum are the ones that we focus on the most. Now, what's interesting is that tomatoes ripen from the inside out. So what we like to do is harvest anything that's starting to turn color. So these tomatoes right here, we can harvest them because they're starting to ripen. When a tomato starts to ripen, it naturally produces a gas called ethylene that actually tells tomatoes around it to start ripening as well. That's why in your garden, you'll notice that it almost seems as if clumps of tomatoes ripen together. So when they start to produce that ethylene, the tomato will start maturing, or it will start ripening from the inside out, which allows us to harvest tomatoes that are lighter in color, even to this point right here, like a pinkish. And what's really cool is when these tomatoes start ripening, if we pull them off at this color as opposed to this color, once this tomato ripens up, it will have the same deep, bold flavor that these tomatoes do. And usually when you're shopping around in a supermarket, or you'll find a sign that says vine ripened tomatoes, a lot of times those tomatoes were picked at this color right here. Now, since the tomatoes started producing their own ethylene gas, it allows them to have a nicer, deeper flavor. The tomato is more mature, and that's why it's really interesting that tomatoes harvested like this, by the time they reach you, they will look like this. A lot of people are confused about vine ripened tomatoes. They assume that they're all harvested at a darker red color. But the matter of fact is, by the time the tomatoes would get to you, they would be overripe and even starting to rot. However, because they're able to harvest the tomatoes at this color, it gets to you at a perfect maturity with a beautiful red color. Because even though the tomatoes are pulled off the plant, ooh, there's a rotten one, they still produce that ethylene gas. And the tomatoes being shipped together help the others to ripen as well. Now, the thing is, not all tomatoes are vine-ripened tomatoes or harvested at a pink color off the vine. Some places will harvest tomatoes with a green color like this, and then they will use a form of ethylene gas on a truck or in a warehouse to ripen them. Now, those tomatoes that are harvested green and then ripened with a gas, they do not have the same flavor that vine-ripened tomatoes do, but it does allow certain areas like where I live in Northeast Pennsylvania in the middle of winter to still have tomatoes. Now, they can still ship vine-ripened tomatoes, but they don't last as long, and they don't look as beautiful as some of these tomatoes that were harvested green and then gassed. Now, I prefer vine-ripened tomatoes. I think they taste the best. And to be completely honest, I love picking them off the vine with this dark red color. Ooh, they just smell so good. But the longer that tomatoes are out here in the field, turning to that dark red color, there is a few things that could happen. They could be damaged by the weather. A darker red tomato has a higher chance of splitting from moisture. As the tomato gets darker, that means the skin gets thinner and it's a lot easier for insects to cause damage as well. So by picking these tomatoes off at a pinker or even an orange color, it allows us to make sure that our tomatoes are beautiful and have as few imperfections as possible. But as a tomato farmer, I just think it's so cool how these can be harvested green and then gassed to ripen. But I think it's even cooler that you can harvest them at a beautiful pink color and ship them, and by the time they arrive at your supermarket or wherever you buy your tomatoes, they look just like this. Now, something that's cool with our farm market and the people who shop here locally, a lot of the times when they order their canning tomatoes, they're not picked at these colors, they're picked at a darker color, which really allows the customers to receive tomatoes that are very fresh. The only issue is the longer we wait to harvest our tomatoes, the more waste that we have. And that's something we've been trying to avoid this year. So we've been trying to be proactive and we've been trying to get to the tomatoes early, which is what we're doing this year. But this is one of my favorite jobs. Once the time comes, harvesting tomatoes. I don't know what it is about this crop. I just don't mind picking it. I could almost harvest tomatoes all day. I think it's just from waiting all year, the seeding process, the transplanting process, the fertilizing, the taking care of them. It just feels good once you get to the point where you can have a nice basket of tomatoes that looks just like this. So all in all, just to reiterate, tomatoes are awesome and you can do a lot of stuff with tomatoes. And if you're like us and you live in the north and you can't have fresh tomatoes all year long, so you have to eat the gas tomatoes at some point, it just makes you look so much more forward to the time when you can harvest your own tomatoes or get them locally. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, and I know what you're saying. Andrew, I didn't think I was gonna be taken to tomato school today. Well, you're welcome. This is what we do here. We have fun. And one more thing, a lot of people wonder why the tomatoes they get in the store always look so perfect. That's why. Because they're harvested when they haven't had any insect pressure, they haven't had any weather pressure. A lot of times they're picked like this when you're buying vine-ripened tomatoes. But that just goes to show you why vine-ripened tomatoes, ooh, they just taste so good. And yes, you can taste the difference. You're not going crazy. Now, if there are any tomato questions that you have that I did not answer today, let me know down in the comments. I'll try to get to them in the future.
Sometimes they really hide in here. You got to be careful. You don't want to be breaking the vines either, although you have to move them around to get at them.
So you don't want to break the vines because you can see there's a lot of big plum tomatoes here, but there is some smaller ones and you want them to keep growing. So you don't want to be breaking the vines and cuts the nutrients off to the tomato. And what will happen is they'll all start ripening once you break the vine off. But they won't get any more size to them, so we want them little ones to get bigger.
We do raise determinate tomatoes here on the farm, but as you can see, these plants are still lush and green, so they're not done growing. and we do not want to stop them from growing. They will stop in their own time. Dad is carrying out our last basket of plum. We have now got all the plum harvested that we needed. We're not finished with harvesting tomatoes yet. Matthew needs help picking the round. We want to get 20 baskets of round, so we're going to join in and pick with him. Now with the round tomatoes, our picking is going to be a little bit different. With these tomatoes, we're going to be pulling off the top stem. The skins on these round tomatoes are a little thinner. So when we put the tomatoes in with the tops on, it actually will poke holes in some of the other tomatoes. So you will see us removing the tops off of the round tomatoes, but not off of the plum tomatoes, because the plum tomatoes have a thicker skin. I normally am not harvesting the round tomatoes. I usually only pick plum tomatoes, so I have to remind myself once I get in the groove to keep taking the tops off of these round tomatoes. You'd be surprised, but it is easy to forget sometimes. Oh, wow. That's a 2-pounder, I think, and it's going in my basket. All finished now with harvesting the tomatoes. We got quite a bit, and they all look really, really good. And can you tell which hand I use for picking tomatoes? Yeah, that looks great. Forget having a green thumb. Can you imagine having a green hand? Ay, ay, ay. Even though we're finished with harvesting tomatoes, that does not mean we're done picking out here. We're moving on to the zucchini next. This is the zucchini that we were interested in. This is the newest planting of zucchini that we've been harvesting. We're not expecting to find too much. It is a little on the younger side, but it's still important to walk through it just to make sure that we don't miss anything. And this is what I was afraid of. The zucchini is still struggling with rotting. Now to my left is the pickling cucumbers and regular cucumbers that we had direct seeded into the soil. Sadly, it is getting hit by a little bit of disease, but it is coming out of it. It's only on the old growth. The new growth is looking really, really good. As we start to get later on into the year, disease is a big problem, especially on years like this where it's been as wet as it has. Stuff does not like it when it's this wet, but disease definitely does. So thankfully it's not an end all for these cucumbers that we have seeded and planted here. They're gonna come out of it. The new growth is looking nice and strong, but it is a tiny little setback for the stuff that we have planted here. Uh-oh, we got someone random showing up. Aren't you on the wrong farm?
Yeah.
Now this is our cousin Tyler. He works at the neighbor's farm, but he was doing some side work today. And yeah, he's here and he's helping us pick a little bit. Now the interesting thing is, Tyler used to work on the farm. He was a veggie boy. Tyler, what do you miss picking the most?
Not peas.
See, I tell you, it's not just me. We all do not like picking peas. We got finished with all the zucchini. We got picked whatever was there that we could use. Now we're on to the peppers though. We need a few peppers to take back to the farm. Now for the peppers, there are a few different varieties that we need to harvest, but right away we're getting started with jalapenos. That is one of the biggest jalapenos I've ever seen. Look at that thing. That's a fat boy.
I didn't hear no jalapenos actually.
Jalapenos have now been picked. It looks like Matt is working on a poblano. Dad, what are we gonna pick?
We'll pick a hot cherry while we're waiting.
It's really nice to see that some of these hot cherry peppers are starting to put on color. We're getting a more beautiful harvest. Now the color for the hot cherry peppers has just started, so there's not too much of it, but we plant a lot of hot cherry. So as the year goes on, we'll be able to get more just red ones or just green ones. Some people want just red, some people want just green. We don't like picking the orders for just one color. We like picking everything at one time. But occasionally we will fill the orders that are just red or just green, but it doesn't happen often. We got some poblano, hot cherry, and jalapeno picked. Now all we need for peppers is the bell peppers, and that will be all of them harvested.
And cubanelle.
You see that? Not only bell peppers, but cubanelle peppers. Moving on to the sweet peppers now, I'm gonna get started with bell. And let's just say these bell peppers are probably the nicest peppers that we have on the farm. I mean, look at those. Gorgeous. And I thought the hot peppers looked really good this year, but these bell peppers, I think they're gonna be the best peppers that we have.
Probably was.
We're just wrapping up with all the peppers that we needed to harvest. We got some Cubanelle. We also grabbed some Italianelle along with the beautiful bell peppers that we were picking. We have a few more baskets that we're finishing up, and we'll have to get everything loaded onto the wagon. Oh, Petey, come on. Oh, by the way, we found Petey while we were out here. He's been helping and dropping peppers. Oh my word. We have 5 baskets of peppers on the side-by-side. The rest is on the back of the wagon, and it's all looking really good. We just got everything loaded up. We have our wagon completely full of tomatoes, peppers, and zucchini. And then on the side-by-side, we had to have a few peppers and some baskets of tomatoes.
And me.
So we're gonna have to take a very slow ride home because there's a lot of stuff on here. That's a beautiful wagon. Now that we're back with all the produce, we're running it through the washer. Now with the tomatoes, we're gonna be sorting everything because we basically picked everything we could find. We just got all the tomatoes washed and sorted. Now we're gonna be dumping bell peppers into the washer. We just got everything washed that we needed to run through the washer, so Matthew is going to be taking that stuff up. Here are some of the tomatoes that we sorted. You'll notice that all of these are on the greener side. They will have an opportunity to ripen up down here. And all the stuff that's ripe enough and ready for sale, well, we put that on the wagon and the side-by-side. Now it is starting to get later on in the day, so we want to get our evening chores taken care of, so I'm going to get these cattle fed. I got tomatoes. I got tomatoes and peppers. There you go. Now when it comes to giving produce to the cattle, we always look for our mamas. Come here, mama. Here you go. There we go. We got 2 mamas here. They'll be enjoying the tomatoes. Evening feeding is now all finished. It's usually pretty easy. We don't have to add any silage, so just a little grain dumped on top. We've been up in the farm market for a little bit, just working and getting everything all taken care of, and it is now closing time. So we got stuff pulled off the shelf, and we're moving all the pallets into the cooler. Megan, how was the farm market today? Was it busy? You hear that?
Yes.
Matt's showing her how to pick a good watermelon.
It sounds just like this. But it sounds hollow, but it's not actually hollow.
Yes.
You feel how heavy it is?
Yes. And we now have Joel with us today. How were the horses?
They're appreciating the dry weather.
Yes, no rain rot. I know that. Well, everyone, I just made it home. House is still a little bit of a work in progress, so we've got stuff around here, and we have some stuff going on tonight, so we didn't have time for a big family dinner, so it's just Lauren, myself, and Callie. And since we're gonna sit down and eat, that means this is where we're gonna end the video today. I would like to thank everyone for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.